I am really excited to talk with Mike about his company, and he himself are uniquely positioned to talk about some of the most important trends that are influencing the workforce today. Companies are changing their approach to designing work, supplying and managing talent, measuring performance, applying new technologies in new ways. Love to talk to you about some of these trends that you're seeing. Last time we spoke for more than an hour. It wasn't enough time. Here, we've only got 10 minutes. We're not going to have time to take questions. What would you say some of the top trends that you're seeing are that are the most interesting, surprising, and consequential today?
No problems. Yeah, 10 minutes. So I'm going to have to squeeze as much in as I can, David. So I'll try and speak fast. But I think one of the most innovative ones that I've seen more recently that started to take shape is this label that's emerging of what's called trust-based hiring. And if you think about the way that recruitment typically happens within an organization, you typically have a talent acquisition team, an outsourced team, a third-party agency that's recruiting on behalf of an organization, and they hand off that candidate internally, and then the hiring manager does the first interview. They're involved in maybe a technical assessment. They do the second interview. They work with HR on onboarding, etc. And this move towards trust-based hiring is the thought process of how can we take our talent acquisition team and individual recruiters and make them absolute experts in every facet of what happens within this particular line of business and department, and allow them to almost run 90% of that process without the need for the hiring manager to be as intimately involved as they were previously. Now, in these situations, typically the hiring manager is still involved in the final process, cultural team check, etc. But the recruiter is effectively empowered to undertake all of the steps in that process, including technical, behavioral, and competency style interviews that previously would have happened in a forum where the hiring manager did that. That requires you to be very thoughtful and intentional about upskilling your recruiters to be able to undertake those technical style assessments. They need to understand what a good answer looks like. But it's resulting in three things. The talent's happier because they get through the process faster and you see increased acceptance to offer ratios. The hiring manager spends more time on their core business. And lastly, the recruiter's happier because they're having a more deep and profound impact on the organization. One of the interesting things that's connected to this is obviously with the plethora of discussion points on generative AI at the moment, the democratization of intelligence around how to conduct a technical interview, what good technical interview answers look like, etc., is accelerating and also causing questions on that. But I think it's a super interesting trend. The second one I'd say is the movement towards what's called talent and HR orchestration recipes. This is the question about how do you use data, technology, process, in particular predictive analytics, to bring personalization at scale in organizations to get work done faster by integrating with the existing native chat platform of most organizations. So I'll give you a concrete example. Let's imagine that I sent 3 CVs to a hiring manager to review. What would now happen through HR orchestration recipes is I can say every time John Smith gets sent 3 CVs that he hasn't reviewed in this instance, I would like to automatically ping him via the Microsoft Teams native chat application and follow up to say, here's the hyperlinks to those CVs. If you can please review them, that'd be great. And if there's a situation in which you would like to interview them, please click here and we'll make sure that happens in your calendar. And that process is meeting the hiring manager where they are. And the thing that I think is really interesting about this is that's just the tip of the iceberg. You can then take that thought process and apply it to so many different ways of working, which then circumvents the need for your hiring manager or talent acquisition HR community to constantly be logging into different applications, etc. I think that one's got huge promise. And then the last one, I think, is finally, we're starting to see organizations think differently about actually how they get work done. This thought process, this talk of kind of total talent, if you will, has kind of evaded most organizations for a long time. but you genuinely, authentically see organizations putting together like workforce of the future committees that are made up of lots of matrix-enabled functions. And the focus is a move towards how do we get work done? Where do we get it done? Why do we get it done that way? And how do we empower the organization to think differently about how it's accessing skills and moving to a thought process of we don't really care on the vehicle of employment by which we get access to those skills. We just need to double down on the access to them.
That's fantastic. Really appreciate that review of the top 3 trends. So is there any way that you've got the different you've got the trust issue, trust-based hiring, at total management. How would you say that what would you characterize as the relationship between total management and also the trust-based management, or trust-based, skills-based hiring?
Yeah, I think it's a complex one. And I think there's only a few organizations that are really kind of leaning into this at the moment. And previously it was kind of siphoned off for what would consider to be kind of high volume, low skill roles. But we've got examples of very large global MNC, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 organizations that are leaning into this in the professional and technical space. Once they got that right on the permanent side of things, they're now starting to democratize that in other areas of how they've worked. And truth be told, it's easier to achieve in contingent, independent contractor, freelancer, statement of work thought processes than it is on the permanent side. Most of them have actually tackled it on the permanent side. And they've deliberately and intentionally started there because they knew if they could get it right there, the move to the other ways of bringing it to life is easier. We're being entrusted and incredible privilege of ours to be doing that for some organizations where we run the outsourced managed service provider SOW contingent workforce at the moment. And it's having incredibly positive impacts. Time to hire goes up. Cost of hire in some instances goes down. The agility to be able to move faster on time, cost, and quality constraints. It can create serious, unparalleled competitive advantage in talent acquisition.
Cool. And can you speak to this trend in skills-based hiring? There seems to be some equity benefits to that approach.
Yeah, there are. So firstly, I want to applaud the thought process of skills-based hiring. I'm still not convinced, and it might be a little bit controversial, that skills-based hiring is the right label for it. What I would prefer to describe it as a move away from an over-indexation to degrees and experience for roles that don't necessarily require it. And I want to be crystal clear. There are roles that absolutely do require degrees, and you need to be making sure you're clear about that with your organization. But I think organizations are doing it for a number of reasons. Firstly, it opens up talent access that you didn't have before, and a lot of organizations are still critically struggling with bringing in what I would consider to be disproportionate value-creating talent, and organizations are fighting the war for that. Secondly, it does allow you to be able to genuinely move the needle on your inclusion efforts. So I think it's a trend that absolutely needs to be paid attention to, and you need to lean into and explore it. I would argue that organizations need to be more thoughtful in bringing the change management of that practice within their organization. And I'll just give you a small example. I was with a CEO last week in Boston. We talked a little bit about their move to skills-based hiring, and they moved away from over-credentialing and over-indexing on experience. Overnight, their application rates went up by 3x. They're a B2C organization, and as a result of that, the same people that apply for jobs are heavy users of their products and services. And as a result of that, they needed to hire significantly more recruiters to make sure that the talent experience was consistent with the brand experience that they wanted. Now, a move in the right direction that had unfortunate or unforeseen circumstances in their need to invest in making sure that it didn't impact their brand. So a move in the right direction. You need to be thoughtful about the change management. It can help you access talent and get to a stage where you bring in what I would call greater ability to meet your inclusion initiatives, but it's a heavy lift.
I love that example. We've got about 1 minute and 18 seconds left. Potentially the last question. Dozens, if not hundreds of articles are touting or advocating for HR to take on a more strategic role in the enterprise. But can HR take a truly strategic role if their main purview or exclusive purview are employees and not external contributors? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think in the organizations that we work with, HR have already stepped up to the plate in an enormous way in the last 24, 36 months. So it's important that I think I make that point. Secondly, there is a much broader opportunity for HR to take what I would consider to be the people-centric first approach in the way that they work at the moment and apply that to the many other domains of the way that work happens within an organization or the externalities that you reference. One of those, I think, is you're starting to see a trend of HR getting way more involved in operating and managing external workforces. One quick example. CHRO for a very large logistics company, one of the largest in the world more recently, said we have 40% external workforce. And we are going to make sure that we democratize our learning and development content, not only for our own individuals, but for also our external third party, because our customers don't care whether they're externalities or whether they're part of our organization. We believe that that's the right thing to do for the people and then therefore the right thing to do for our customers. So I think that they've stepped up to the plate. They got to take the next step, and I think it's there and ready for them to take that step.
Thank you so much, Mike. This has been such a fun conversation. Wish we could go on. We will go on, I think, at another point, I hope. So thank you again. I'm going to turn this over to Abby. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And that was a great short session. Really appreciate you being here.